interesting discussion that we had in the last session. While yes, the boundaries, the lines that we need to probably look back and see how we would like to define impact. Taking from there, I promise that by the end of this session, we will try and decipher the elements of impact. What are the impacts that we are really making in CSR? But what we will begin with for sure is probably talking about how the changes have been happening over the last many years in CSR in terms of whether we talk about the changes in the amendments in the Act, or for that matter, the way we have started perceiving the CSR per se, from where it started from the development side to now the strategy element or the strategic movement, or moving with the industry 4.0, how we are reinventing ourselves and we are moving ahead with times, and what are in these times very important pieces or elements that we really need to look at from CSR perspective. Or for that matter, the third element is looking at how the pandemic situation or such eventualities that we face on day in and day out could be not just the pandemic, but also something which is natural, which nature provides, kind of extends to us like a disaster. Well, how are we coping up with that, and how are we sinking in with the beneficiaries, the communities that we so-called term within our scope? How are we working towards that? And I think with that, my friends here from various institutions will be speaking about sharing their insights, their inputs on how do they see CSR moving forward over the last many years, and how do they see from here on what is the shape that this whole institution going to take up, whether that's at the corporate end, whether that's with the development sector, whether that's with the institutions, academic, and now for the whole new terminology that has come in is the scientific social responsibility, how these scientific institutions will contribute towards CSR per se. And where do we all converge, and how do we all see ourselves, and what are the other aspects that come in while we all work on towards this journey as a huge team. So my first question here would be to Nilay, to you. You have been working with VI for a long time, and VI has its own journey of exploring CSR. How do you see what have been over a period of time the priority areas that you see around within your organization evolving and taking shape? What has that been like?
Thank you, Nidhi. For us, I have been there for the last 8 years. So the journey is that Vodafone Idea focus on the technology as a threshold, where you use the technology for improving the access and equity among the people. And for all the programs which you design, that's the theme around we work in out. And education is the one area where technology is important because it's a huge scope. And from bringing technology, because during the pandemic, as you said that, there is still standalone, all the children in their home. If you've not done that work earlier, you're not able to reach to the children. And we have created a platforms like Gurushala, where all the teachers are there, and they have started creating their own content. That process help us during the pandemic. Around 20 lakhs children are able to continue their education because the platform is ready. So once, if your priority area is clear and the tools which you are using for scaling up is there, then you can serve when the crisis is there. And second important area where we are working is technology for good. A lot of people are from the civil society as here. So what we are doing it, because area of priority is already prescribed in the schedule, which MC has notified that. This is the area where we work on that. But the technology is a cross-cutting. So what we are working on with the civil society organizations, we are giving whatever the problem they have, we are helping through the technology by creating the platforms, by creating the new technology, where they can amplify and improve their work efficiency. And third important priority area for us is agriculture, because that's the area where very few people are there, because education and health is easy to work because already institutions are created there. You work with the schools, we have teachers, we have 500 children, you can do that. You work with the health system, there's a PSC there. But if you wanted to work with the agriculture, is the unorganized sector. Farmers across the area, how to engage them, how to bring technology, because the distress is there. So we also started for the last 4 years on the agriculture sector, And that's the important journey, because despite lesser priority, we also reach to the northeast states where the less corporates goes, right, in the JNK. And those agriculture is fruitful of us, because if you look at the whole data, majority of the people are working in education and health, but we are the one corporate, we also wanted to work on agriculture. And right now we are working with the 5 lakhs farmer directly, where whole technology, IoT-based solutions help the farmer to reduce the risk and also improve their productivity and the income. So that are 3 areas where we are working primarily. Other 1, 2 are financial literacy and digital literacy. So these are 5 areas where we're working on that.
Great, thanks Nilay. I think very well presented that education, and I'll pick that point up. Education has been the crux, and kind of the so-called the divide has been pretty much clear after the pandemic, or during the pandemic as well, that there's a huge digital divide up there. So Joel, to you, Joel, to you, how have you been looking at within TeamLease, bringing and bridging this digital divide under your foundation, and how have you been working towards bringing it all together?
Hello. Yeah, so I think the first thing we did at TeamLease as a priority way back was to go back to program design, go back to the drawing board, right? The pandemic had a lot of learnings for all of us, and the erstwhile way of face-to-face learning, had literally died by the first wave. Okay, so we went back to the drawing board, and we actually sat with the donors and curated the programs to meet the evolving areas or the evolving parts of the program that could be moved online. I think when we did that, we had a short-term goal in mind, because not everybody knew where the world is going to land up in post-COVID. Very rightfully said by 𝗍𝗲 and a lot of other people, and also 𝗳𝗲𝘀, that, course correction. After the first wave, there was a lot of course correction that we needed to do to readapt, because we didn't, TeamLease has always been advocating farm to non-farm. And then by the time the second wave hit, we went from non-farm back to farm, and we didn't know what to do as a world, right? So course correction is what we did. And we had to use our networks to get to the new age kind of virtual instructor-led skilling programs that most of us moved to over a period of time. So I think these were the priorities. We curated programs to adapt to the new situation that the world was going through. We adapted to those programs. After a period of time, while we were implementing, we course corrected, and we used our network to actually overcome or to come to the stage of moving forward over the COVID crisis and moving ahead of the COVID crisis. So I think I wrote this answer in my last session, which I heard. One is program design, one is course correction, and the last being a strong network to overcome these problems that we all have faced.
Great. Thanks, Joel. I think I love the way you talked about network, and I think it's actually what we are doing is that network of those trees that you see around, and the roots that you see, they have those little connections up there. I think that's what we are trying to build upon, and I love the way you brought the whole network aspect there. Going on to you with Praveen, how have you been looking at 𝗍𝗲𝘀, your priority areas, with the fact that you are into a sunrise space of electrification, as well as, of course, the digital 4.0 aspect, industry 4.0 aspect. How have you been bringing in your priority areas around that?
Thank you very much for the question, Anupam-ji. Yes, 𝗍𝗲𝘀 has been trying to do a lot of things, but I would like to perhaps answer this question in context of the responses that I have observed with my colleagues working in the development sector. What are the things which has happened in the last 10 years? Say 2013 we got the act, and then like we are sitting today in 2022, close to 10 years we have. What all have we observed? The very first thing that I observed in last 10 years is a discussion about 2% and not about rest 98%, which is a fact. Okay, we all need to brainstorm and rethink about it. There are 6 things which I'll talk, which I have observed, which is happening. A lot of skill development and education. जिसको रोटी की भी जरूरत है उसको भी skill development दे दो. So, you know, the topmost spend and attention and the boardroom discussion is all about the skill development and education. Irrespective of the fact the person require it, the area requires it or not. Third thing, a lot of baseline. We heard couple of speakers before that how and why baselines are important, but how scientifically it has been done. But yes, this is happening in last 10 years. Impact, I'll talk about it. I have my own set of understanding, which I'm trying to develop. Exactly, we'll come on that. So I'm not talking on it. Reports and disclosure, that has happened a lot. COVID, and last but not the least, awards. So a lot of awards has happened in last 10 years, the priority areas for my observation. All right. What has been the priority areas? I would not like to talk on that, but what should be the priority area? If there's a baseline, are we doing market assessment, institutional assessment, and people's assessment for conceiving a program or not? That's significant. A project that you conceive, that you identified to undertake, are you competent enough to do everything for that project? Or are you flexible to leverage it with rest of the partners? This is how it should be. This is how the priority should be decided, leveraging strength from other partners. Because I cannot be expert for everything. Let's say you take any of the project that you've been doing. You cannot be an expert for maybe implementation, maybe need assessment, impact assessment. A lot of scientific things has to be done. And we think that, yes, I can do everything. No, you cannot, actually. Are we supplementing to the already existing programs of the government? The government of India has got all the programs. आपके जन्म से लेके आपके मृत्यु तक हर चीज के लिए एक प्रोग्राम है. क्या हमने अपने प्रोग्राम को उसके साथ align किया? And the bigger agenda, of course, SDG. This is how the priority area should be. And are they there like that? 2 more points. Are we identifying our projects in participation with all the stakeholders? The people and the panchayat are 2 major stakeholders that we have. This is how the priority area should be. Last point, which I feel as if should be prioritized, is pooling in of resources. There are aspirational districts. There are northeastern states where we do not have industry presence. There is an island, Andaman Nicobar. वो डूब रहा है, 75 साल में डूब जाएगा. वहाँ पे कोई इंडस्ट्री नहीं है. Is it gonna be a priority pooling area for maybe few of us who have some spare fund other than prioritizing their local area? This is how it should be. So rather than like, what are my priority area, what should be our priority area, I answered that question, Anupam ji.
Great, Praveen. I think the fact that you brought in a very different perspective to the priority area, it's a precursor to that. How do you arrive to your priority area? Then what should lead you to your areas of your action point? And with that, I would like to come to you, Rajiv. Rajiv, you have been a veteran for all of us, as in somebody who we look after for in terms of guidance, in terms of the kind of work that you've been delivering in this fair. My question to you would be, how have you kind of changed the whole traction in Jindals over a period of time, and where has this old age organization redeployed some of the new thinkings or elements from your end and reshaped itself, and where does it lie right now?
Thank you, Nidhi. She always loves to put me in a trap, you know, because a question thrown from a veteran standpoint, coming from a veteran to a corporate. Well, the bottom line remains the people, the first P. Whether you're in the defense, you are there for the people. And here, in corporate, when I left, I mean, I took premature, I moved on, I joined Jindal, been there for a long time now. But it's the people connect. Unless the people are with you, which is the first P of the triple bottom line, the people, planet, profit, nothing will move. So the priority remains the communities. Now ours is a stainless steel sector. Manufacturing, extractive, we got mines. The first thing is that our projects are around our plant locations and the supply chains. Unlike, of course, we have Vodafone, we got Airtel, we got the educational institutions who have the liberty of going wherever you want to, because the manufacturing processes perhaps are limited. It's more a service industry. So there is a change which is to be understood in corporate social responsibility between the extractive industries, the manufacturing industries, and the service industries. The second thing is, when you talked about Jindal's coming into the CSR domain and how it changed, well, to be honest with you, with Jindal Stainless Limited Group, I started CSR for the group. And I feel there's a lot of ownership in whatever I see today. And thanks to Mrs. Deepika Jindal, chairperson of the foundation, wife of the chairman, that we are in sync in some of these very important projects that we've tried to scale up, and to understand that it is no more CWP, a charity welfare philanthropy, which the family businesses have been very used to, of working on what we think is right. Building hospitals, building schools. Somebody's wanting some money, give a checkbook. Philanthropy is what was adopted. Not that connect with the community, and that is become more and more important in the last 15 years, I should say, maybe 20, but 15 definitely. But even today, after 10 years of the Act, it's only perhaps the larger companies who've got an independent CSR division. Others are either being handled by the HR or being handled by the company secretary, as somebody mentioned, as somebody else is talking about. The CFO handles it, etc., etc. So we've got to be very clear. Because when you're positioned here, you can bring about a change because you've got a direct connect with the MD or the CMD and direct connect with the family. If you work through another kind of a, barrier in between, perhaps there are challenges around. And I was privileged when I got this opportunity to translate. Of course, somebody mentioned that everybody's not qualified. I'm not qualified to be a CSR professional. I don't have that tag of an MSW or a something or BSW and a tag of something like that. But when your heart is right, when you got that kind of an experience, personally I feel you can drive. And that's what I did for Jindal Stainless Group. Starting with those projects with my first presentation which I made at the beginning. It's a change which is required. Today's changing environment, mask is off, on, off, travels, restricted, now movement again, getting together like this, shifting foci on what are your project's domains, giving priorities today on the ESG piece, making sure your carbon mitigation strategies are in place, ensuring you invest that money required to reduce your carbon footprints. And as far as CSR is concerned, not only planting trees, but making sure the trees you plant survive. Make sure that you're working with the farmers, as my colleague just talked about. But what? Changing the old habits to the new ones. Making sure that climate resilient technologies are embedded in the farmers, which means use less water, change cropping patterns, make sure what the markets are wanting, make sure nutritional value is maintained. So such kind of things, I think, is the need of the hour, and more corporates need to partner. And SDG 17, as I mentioned to you, partnerships will change the landscape for tomorrow.
Thank you, Rajiv. That's why I call you the veteran. So kind of bringing on Lavanya to you, as in We talked about the change, we talked about the impact. We have been talking about many other elements now, ESG. But then there's one very important piece about inclusivity. And I think if we talk about ESG and not talk about inclusivity, I think we are not doing justice to it. How do you see inclusivity and Genpact being the organization that it has been? It has been probably the leaders in technology and changing the way people saw technology or people expected technology-based companies to work. I think Genpact brought the difference there, right? So how do you see Genpact as carving out its space in inclusivity, and what level of inclusivity are you working up there?
So inclusion is fundamentally, tech can enable inclusion, but inclusion is a people behavior at the end of the day, right? And I think that's a very important difference to understand. You can set up as many virtual meetings as you want, but the fact of the matter is people have to show up to those meetings and they have to engage with other human beings. So it's really about driving that change in behavior. Now, you think about it, as a human being, human behavior, we are comfortable with what we are comfortable with. So the same kind of people, the same kind of environment, same thought process, same opinions and those kinds of things, you don't have that conflict. So you kind of feed off of each other's energy. But how do you drive that awareness is that you're actually limiting yourself. And you're limiting yourself not marginally, you're limiting yourself significantly. Because if you experience and face no challenge in how you think, how you behave, how you interact, people from various diverse backgrounds and so on, your world is myopic. It is so tiny and it is so small, and how will you have a larger view? If I were to, sort of translate this a little bit into the CSR space as well, I mean, we go in with partners and projects, and let's be clear, as corporates, we think we know everything. We get into the ground and we say, you know what, this is the impact I want to drive, these are the numbers I want to have, this is the measurement I want to have, and this is the way I think is the right way to do it. But the reality of the matter is that you have a foundation or a not-for-profit partner that actually understands the dynamics on the ground a whole lot better than you do. And if you are going to define those projects and those impact goals, you need the community you're working with. What are their challenges? Are you going to enable them with tech that they're never going to be able to use? Or are you going to translate it in a manner and phase it out in a manner so it actually becomes part of that change of behavior? Are you going to engage with your foundation to actually understand the dynamics of that community and how you can engage with that community in order to create that right kind of outcome? And the last thing I sort of want to leave everyone with is think about, why are you doing this? Why are you actually in this community trying to do this job? What's the reason for it? It's not just to spend your 2% funds. It's not like we may have done many years ago, which is to focus on coverage. So many people touched, lives touched. But what is the actual impact of it? If I'm looking at education, we're teaching lots of children. We've built great infrastructure, all of that is in place. But have my kids progressed? Have we actually changed something systemically where I'm seeing girl and boy child get the same kind of attention and importance in the classroom? Am I seeing that grade level literacy move up? And it's not about going from point A to the end. It's about point A to point B to point C to point D, so that you also are changing along with each point, making what you're doing more and more relevant. I mean, if I think to the way I was educated in school versus how my daughter is being educated in school, wow, there is a night and day difference. And that night and day difference is creating much more thoughtful, much more engaged, much more worldly human beings today. So I think if you set goals for yourself and you cast them in stone and you define it and you don't collaborate, you don't bring in the right kinds of individuals for that inclusivity, you will actually never be successful. You will just meet numbers and there will be no effectiveness. And to me, in our projects, the biggest measure is effectiveness. Has it been an effective project?
Great. I think the way you brought in the Lavanya, the milestone part of it, I think milestone is what we were just discussing a while back. I think milestones are how we decide what our milestones are, whether we want to bring it now within the impact study or SROI is a decision that we need to take. But I think what the guidelines are telling us is to have a vision, have an understanding of the light at the end of the tunnel. Where are you heading towards? You may change your course, and Lavanya, you mentioned it very emphatically that you can change your course, but at least you need to know that you are on the right course or not, or right track or not. I think that's where the clarity comes in with what we are all emerging, evolving ourselves out of. With that, I would come back to you, Praveen, and then to kind of ask you a bit more about the kind of challenges that you did talk about a bit. Oh, sorry, apologies, Praveen. Sure. The challenges which Rajiv was mentioning, as in his own discussions, about how there has been the journey of the welfare, the charity part of it, and then to the ESG and sustainability. Do you think, because Spark Minda, what it has been doing has been pretty much in the industry, if I say 4.3, so was it the same for you, or how were the challenges for you there?
Sure. So I'd like to share that with my experience in last 10 years that I've worked with Minda Corporation Limited. The development professionals, the CSR professionals, that the challenges that they face during implementation of the program, during conceiving the program, maybe during execution, and then after that, like you get into the mode of impact assessments. So, हमारे promoter की सोच थी कि देश का कोई भी बच्चा भूखा नहीं सोना चाहिए, सबको खाना बांट दो, राशन बांट दो. You know, at times it starts with such kind of rigid thematic selections which might come from promoter, at times from boards, that the boards have been deciding the projects for you. CSR committee is somewhere in between, and a typical CSR person, the CSR head or the team is somewhere who is a conduit between the board and of course the grassroots team. The real identification and the utilization of a baseline would only be done if the grassroots person who has identified the data and the problem statement is being organized well by the CSR committee, and then it is placed to the board. Rather, the board is deciding upon it. So the very first challenge that many of us would be facing is that preconceived projects that could be decided by maybe the board or the committee, it should not happen. It need not to happen, and we have to work on it. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the census, 2011 के बाद देश में कोई census survey नहीं हुआ है. आप यदि primary data को refer करना चाहते हैं, you would hardly get anything. And many a times, we get into a project looking at that census, 2011. Yeah? And for that reason, this becomes a challenge for us to go for the selection of a project, priority areas, geography. This is a challenge, we need to mitigate that. You might have to conduct some kind of a survey with some sample. What is that sample and how much time is available with you with the present law? That is also something very critical. Third point. Customization of a project. You know, a project cannot be a rocket science kind of a thing where you did everything and there is something which is a scientific process and somebody did it and you just replicated it. And therefore, the customization, the real redressal of the need is needed to be customized. First. Second part of it is the sustainability of the project and your exit plan. Do you have an exit plan for the place, for the people that you are working for? Most of the time, you would see that you do not have an exit plan. You did not see whether you hand it over to the panchayat or to the people, to the NGO or to the government. You did not think about it. You just had to do it. The board asked you to do it, and you are since a CSR manager, and you got to do it, and you found out a project, and you did it for 3 years. Now see, MCA is another, there's a mandate from MCA that the ongoing project could be of 3 years. Now see, if you have a project where it requires a timeline of 5 years, what would you do? Will you stop in 3 years? Won't you do it in 4th year? Okay, or you call it you stopped it and then again you are reinitiating the entire process to get it registered. Very, very interesting things are happening. Okay, and is it why that the MCA is saying कि 3 साल के बाद आपको project आपकी ongoing नहीं हो सकती, चौथे साल में नहीं हो सकती? That's another challenge that I'm sure many of my colleagues have been facing, and we keep talking about it, isn't it, Anupam? Right. Few more points which I'd like to mention is that, well, you would have observed that majority of your budget would be coming to you from your finance department to perhaps if you have your own foundation on the last quarter. Because if the money is there with them in the first 3 quarters, that hits to their balance sheet. And you are getting the money probably in the month of March, which is the last month of the completion of financial year. What would you do with that money? It's literally becoming impossible for you to spend that. And how are you going to deal with that? Unspent account, right? That's another story. Prime Minister Relief Fund and many other things. You are doing some projects, you have something on education, healthcare, something, you got an approval from the board, all of the sudden, one of the, let's say, promoter or a board of director gives you a call, says, there is a donation request. X NGO, X project requires a donation. एक यहाँ पे विधायक जी हैं, वो कह रहे हैं कि यहाँ पर एक निर्माण होना है जिसमें आपका साथ चाहिए और आप हमारे एरिया, हमारे क्षेत्र में काम करते हैं, तो आपको ये तो करना पड़ेगा. What is your take on it? You as an CSR professional, you're implementing your own projects for which you have dedicated your money, which is allocated in the beginning of the year, and all of the sudden, the board of the director or maybe your promoter is saying that give it to the Sansad ji. Okay, donation. Is that CSR? We all know that that is not a CSR. I take 2 more minutes if you allow. Yeah?
Make it one.
Okay, I make it one. CSR is a very small community. So far, I believe, replications are not happening. A good project which is there with me, I learned some good projects with, from many of my colleagues sitting here. I am copy pasting them. I don't mind doing that. You can replicate things. It's not happening. That's another challenge. And why it's not happening? Because of perhaps maybe some hidden ego which is there with us कि नहीं मेरा project मेरा अपना है, जिसका अपना एक नाम है, जिसकी अपनी एक identity है. 30 सेकंड और है मेरे पास. Blanket donor professionals ये नाम बन गया है कि CSR क्या है? Blanket donation है. इससे ऊपर निकलने की ज़रूरत है. ये बहुत साइंटिफिक चीज़ है. ये नहीं हो पा रहा है. Impact की बात करूँगा. Who will do impact assessment? Everybody will raise the hand. MCA has not clarified that who are entitled, who are eligible, who are capable, who has a knack to do impact assessment. और वो जो confusion output, outcome और impact का है, इसके बारे में तो समय नहीं है, लेकिन मैं बात करना चाहूँगा कभी, यदि मौका मिलेगा तो. और last, once I'm in a field, always I'm in a field. We all development professional have to understand. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen. Thank you. Rajiv ji, to you, how have you been interpreting some of these challenges that Praveen just shared, specifically going on to where out of the blue you get a request for an investment? It probably could be brought into CSR as well. As we said, interpret it liberally. So if we end up liberally interpreting it, there are a lot of ways to bring it within the CSR scope. But how have you been dealing with that? Maybe demystify it for the others and for us.
Right. Thank you. To start with, I must share, I have an experience with the only company of leaving the army. I'm very clear about certain stances, because I have a direct connection with the chairman and with Mrs. 𝗍cie𝗰𝘀𝘀. That's why I take the liberty. So what Praveen has mentioned is absolutely right. Whether the budget is coming in the month of March and given for donation, I personally do not subscribe to that. I am very clear about it. I plan for next financial year. Approximation is approximately so much. And if the budget doesn't come, I move it from top to bottom. And when I move from the top to the bottom, it comes within a jiff. So I'm very clear about that. The second thing is about the pressures that you talk about. Is right. Vidhayaks, Sandhayak, and MPs and the works. And obviously you're living in an ecosystem which demands that you obviously take care of the community. But if it is even to sponsor an event, generally my take is no. Whenever it is required for this program of Har Ghar Tiranga, let's be honest, every house will be flying a flag. I was on a visit to Hisar 3-4 days ago, and I was told that the DC and was come from the State Department, from the state government, obviously the agenda from the PMO, or the Cultural Ministry of Culture. Good show, boy, good show. 75th year. But why 5 days before, or 10 days before, or 15 days before, this instruction is being given by the government to the corporations that, excuse me, this has to be done. Excuse me, we need 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs of flags. This is the dimension, this is the quality, these are the guys you go and procure from. Nonsense. The intent is good, I agree with you. Do it yourself. Do it yourself. When I told my CSR team that, sir, this is the pressure that I'm getting at, I said, who is applying pressure? You just tell me and I'll sort him out. I'm being honest with you. By the time I reached back, I said, sir, that's been taken off from us. And the budget, okay, budget is one part. I'm not talking about the budget because the corporate has mentioned, the ministry has mentioned that the investments that you're going to be carrying on flags will be part of CSR. Cool. CSR is in a project mode. It's not on donation mode. It's not that the DC has said this, therefore I have to do it. I will do it. But there's a method of doing it. There will be a project, there will be an insightful kind of a thing for houses to raise their flags. And why I've become a little passionate about this is because earlier you could not have national flags being flown in your homes. It was only state buildings and the government buildings. It was Mr. Naveen Jindal from Jindal Stainless and Jindal Steel and Power Limited, from our group, who had raised it to the Supreme Court, and the orders came that everyone can raise a flag. So it's very personal. You found a flag flying 15 years ago in Connaught Place. That huge flag. You are finding flags across the Himalayas. Good thing. But this direction, coming 15 days earlier to buy it, and what has happened is the quality is suffering. You're getting what? Plastic flags? Which were banned. Today there is an instruction that even that is being accepted.
Polyester.
Yes.
Polyester flags.
Polyester
Yes. Not
flags.
khadi, but you can go on to polyester
Earlier
flags.
it was
too.
khadi only. And khadi guys sitting in Surat, sitting in Gurugram, sitting in some of the geographies, they can't match up to the demand that has suddenly come. So I'm saying there are these challenges, but you have got to be strong enough. You've got to be strong enough to say that, excuse me, it's a good thing to do, but do it my way. And if you take a stand, people appreciate it. People understand. And yesterday when I was having a meeting with the MD, I said, I did not like this aspect in Hisar, what I saw. And he said, right. He said, right. So I'm saying, don't subscribe or succumb to the pressures sometimes which come on CSR. Be strong enough. I know you guys are youngsters, so you guys must be having a lot of, I couldn't be bothered, but I'm very clear. My heart is in the right place, and that's what is important to move forward.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you. Very well said there. Nilay, that was my question to you, but since Rajiv has covered that point, I'll add on another point. From what Rajiv mentioned, he talked about a lot about governance in his way. He talked about it not being negotiable. How do you look at it in your organization, the whole governance part of it, and it being non-negotiable?
See, what Rajiv said that in the whole CSR aspect, there are two major critical challenges. What he says that is advocacy. Once it is law, the process is set. This project mode, board have to approve the projects. 10 days back, you cannot issue the circular. Then you are floating the law. Law have to be obeyed with every people, and it has a process to follow. Similarly, 10 days back, they add something and issue a circular. That cannot be done, because then you are allowing us to, without the board permissions, you can do that. 15 days, how you can do that? So that's the ad hocism which happened during the COVID also. Some issue, some circular, once amendment is done, we are following the processes. But this ad hocism need to be addressed. It will take away all the principles and the processes, because in the corporate we follow the governance. We cannot do ad hocism. So this ad hocism is a challenges in terms of whole law. Second is which earlier Rajiv said that, people, the change in the people. If any wanted to do the impact, means for any impact, what we have to do that, you have to do the processes and the way people are doing the things. It's a challenge, because people are doing things for 70 years, 50 years, same thing. And if you wanted to bring the impact, you have to change both the process and the approach, the way they're doing it. Then only you can change the add-on value to that, whether through education, through agriculture, because the way they are doing it, they're doing it. But to adding new adaptation by those people, it takes time. And my experience is that this is an opportunity and challenge both, because that's the instinct of the whole, when the CSR policy was designed, in the corporate we have a timelines, we have a process, we have activity to deliver it. The similar way, if you design that, you do a pilot mode in the particular locations, when the people start trusting the things, it is good for them and it is improving some people's lives, then a skill in the particular areas, adaptation is high. But once you go in a 1 year, just adding this equipment and you adopt this technology, people will be reluctant to do that. But 1, 2, 3 years, second year, the adaptation will be high, and third year, people are seeing the change, and the fourth year, themselves, they can demand it. Like, classic example is that we have done IoT solutions. In West, there is a precise agriculture, they're doing it. But it requires local weatherizations, local soil pro, insects, those information all the farmer required it. When we did for 50,000 farmer, first year the farmer don't believe it. When we say that today you cut your grains because barish hogi, they say that I don't trust, because weather department wale bolte hain, hota hi nahi. After 6 months, 8 months, we start sending advisory every week. After 1 year, last year, in June, when we went there in the Bhopal, all the farmers sitting and they're showing them on mobile. And at the one day when I visited to the field, temperature was 38-degree temperature. And my application said that local weather station, today is going to rain and people are cutting their fasal. I said, why are you doing it? Because today 3 o'clock is going to rain. But our information is precise. Actually, it's happened. I also don't believe it. When I was sitting after the lunch, we are going back, and there's 2 people from the Netherlands, and the ambassador of the Netherlands was also there. When moving back, I said there is a raining. Then I called him that the farmer is trusting because what we are saying is right. And once they develop the trust with us in the 1.5 year, now we expanded to 5 lakhs. So that the process is, because until it's don't change the way people are doing the activity and the approach, we cannot bring the change. And once you do the change, they adopt it, you can see the impact, 3 years, 4 years, that is done. But that is it is challenging also, but if you design a way, don't think of it will come one day, but if you design for 3 years of 2 years lens, it will come and you can see the change happen.
Thanks, Nilay. Yeah, just give us 5 minutes, we'll just close it off. I just want to come in quickly to Lavanya and then to Joel. So Lavanya, he talked about trust, and trust comes with transparency. What's your take on that?
100%. I mean, and I see no reason why we can't be transparent. I mean, at the end of the day, we have certain set projects with certain outcomes, certain goals, certain budgets associated with them. And I take a very practical view to some of this. What is the worst? The worst is that you're not going to be meeting your goals. If you're not meeting your goals, it is important for you to stop and say, why am I not meeting my goals? Do I need to, I mean, your project may not be wrong, maybe your approach is wrong, maybe the way you're thinking about it is wrong, maybe the way you're defining your implementation strategy is wrong. So these are important things to stop you and just think about what it is that you are, as I said, why are you doing it? You're doing it to create significant systemic change in a community, whether it is or in the space of education, whether it is with not-for-profits that you're working on. You're doing it to create that actual systemic change and upliftment. Otherwise, why are we doing it? So if it is not working, then transparency is important. It's not working. I need to rethink the way I'm doing it. I just add, and maybe I come from a slightly more idealistic universe, but you know, when you think of your projects, your plans, and your budgets, you do need to think of it from a quarterly perspective. You do need to make sure that your funds are coming in as per requirement. How is your partner going to function or work? And I think the way we have typically operated is actually we sign off our budget in January for the whole year for plus 3 months. So the tranches, etc., are all very well planned and thought through, and it sort of just happens. As far as, you know, donations are concerned and spaces in which you, you know, put your money because it's required because of X, Y, Z factor, I think you just have to think about, is this donation actually benefiting the work that I am trying to do now? I'm supporting a school in Gurugram. You tell me that we need to think about starting another livelihood project in that school because you know what, COVID affected livelihoods and it's impacting the kids that are coming to school. So we want to make sure that those parents have the livelihood in order to support the education of your kids. I'll do that project. But if you tell me to donate towards flags, I might not. Because at the end of the day, you want that money that you're spending to actually combine together, to your point, to create that systemic impact that you're trying to drive. So it's about the ecosystem, building out the ecosystem. And when you think of a small geography, you can think of scaling that impact. But you have to have the right processes in place and the right transparencies in place in order to actually scale that impact. If you build something for 10,000 people, it will be irrelevant in 5 years. But if you I mean, look at our highways. We built them, but we didn't account for the amount of traffic that was going to be on them, right? They're great roads, nothing wrong with them. But if you're trying to create sustainable social impact, then you need to think about how is this really going to scale and stand the test of time in terms of the kind of changes that are going to take place. So, you know, I think it's about coming out of the lofty into the practical, into reality, and into what is really going to work versus what feels like it's going to work.
Thank you, Lavanya. I think you talked about scalable impact, and to you, Joel, I would like to take on this whole element of Lavanya talking about, and of course before that Praveen and others also spoke about the impact and that to scalable. How do you think impact investing is really supporting in that? And though it's a very long subject, maybe 2 minutes if you could quickly talk about how it has been.
I didn't get the challenges, so I'm going to drop it at that, but I had a few points on the challenges. I'd like to take a stab at that for just a second. I think the biggest challenge that we all face as a community is look at the amount of people in this room, okay? And if you have an HR tech summit or you have an L&D summit in the opposite room, you look at the amount of people in that room. So nobody is taking us seriously. Other than the people in this room, this is Delhi. I mean, are you telling me that there are 150 CSR professionals in Delhi? So I think that's a big challenge which nobody talks about. We need more people, okay? We need more people to believe that CSR can be a career, and we need corporates to start paying for that career as much as they would pay an IIT graduate coming out and being a fresher. I think that is one of the biggest challenges we face, so I took a stab at that, okay? And once you start believing, once you start having a packed house, you know, the impact will be driven and embedded into a system, and a quantifiable impact with a social return on investment. Okay, a long-term impact will be driven because we are only this many people in the whole of Delhi and maybe a few 50, 100 more which I attended in Bombay. Okay, that's why we're saying impact is taking longer and impact has to be thought more about. But if we have a lot many more ambassadors like us, impact will get driven in all forms and fashion, and there will be a paradigm shift in the way CSR or implementation or projects were looked at vis-a-vis what it is looked at the moment.
Sure. I think,
Thank
Joel,
you so
maybe
much.
we can look at impact investing as a separate subject sometime else because it's a complete, but what you did mention about is about the fact that why people are not here. Why are we not being taken seriously? I think we also need to look inwardly. And I'm taking it on a very serious note. We don't need to be sitting here and doing such conferences. We need to be out on the field where we are really working to do such conferences. We need to probably go to Ghazala, to your destination, or maybe Joel, to your location where you are implementing programs, and actually sitting there and learning from each other in terms of what are the practices that you're adopting, which I could probably take back home, and how can I bring in something new to you, or maybe there could be a collaboration, a partnership. So I'm talking about we are in our own silos, in our own spaces, maybe not silo, but in our own spaces creating very strong, sustainable, replicable models. But are we with like those roots? Are we actually interconnecting with each other? Are we collaborating? Are we talking about the scalable impact that we are talking about? I think we also need to go back and inwardly look into ourselves. And I would leave ourselves with that we have to talk about CSR in the space where we are working, not in the conferences like this. Or if these conferences do happen, then there has to be an engagement, a call for action after this. It should not move from one seminar to the other seminar to the other seminar, and we meet only on those seminars. So I think we really need to do a lot more within us than probably looking outside for help. I think help is all within us. Thank you. Thank you with that note. Pleasure to having all your time and your attention. Thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Maybe we can open the floor for question for a minute. I may not
we have
be
any
doing
questions?
justice. Yes.
Yes.
Maybe we can take 2 questions and rest for lunch networking.
Hi, I'm Sudeep Dubey from Learninglinks Foundation. We are an implementing organization, an NGO that works across the country. A couple of very good points that came out, especially towards the end, where Joel said that, we need to start looking at ourselves seriously, and we need to kind of give this sector the place that it deserves. When I've been a part of this conversation, then HR told me, "Oh, you're joining an NGO," when I was transitioning from a corporate, and they said, "Oh, that's not a mainstream profession." It was a big Fortune 500, and I did not join that organization because that HR made that statement, and I chose this. Coming back to the conversation, I had a point to ask you, which is on something that got discussed. But are the corporates willing to move out from their comfort zones or sweet spots of the preferred locations and support a place which is needing intervention? For example, Maharashtra gets a lot of funding, maybe Gujarat gets a lot of funding, Delhi gets some of it, but why not the Northeast? Or go to a location which is kind of, I cannot reach there, so I don't want to do an intervention there. So how is the boardroom conversation changing in your organizations on reaching those locations? I wanted to have a view on that.
I can take a shot at it. So I think, so I'll give you an example. One of our projects is called the Better World Initiative, in which we take our skills as an organization in Lean Six Sigma process re-engineering and actually build that end-to-end process mapping for projects for not-for-profit organizations. Now, our belief is that actually not-for-profits, they know what they're doing. They're the ones with the capability of scale. What we can do is bring our expertise in terms of the work that we do for our clients, as far as process management is concerned, so that they can actually achieve that scale. So today, my team, sitting out of small locations, is working with several not-for-profits that are working in the Northeast, that are working in Kashmir, that are working in Orissa and the tribal areas, and so on. So I think we've got to stop thinking about corporate social responsibility in such a linear way, which is just focused on, project, outcome, etc. This is how it's going to be. These are the buildings that are going to come together. This is the infrastructure that's going to happen, and so on and so forth. I think we need to start thinking about how we create that capability, create that enablement, so that the skills are transferring from one sector to the other. And to your first point about CSR as a profession, I think by the grace of God, those times are changing. You want people who are not just passionate, but you want people who are bringing capabilities so that you can really drive that systemic change. Otherwise, it's never going to move past the point we are at today, right? We have to build for the future as opposed to building for the here and now.
Thank you, Lavanya. Make it 20 seconds.
Two recommendations. Garima just made a presentation about the CSR amendments. Two recommendations for MCA. First, the unspent money, which is there with you, can be deputed for all such locations which are priority in nature, that northeastern states or maybe any Schedule 5 areas or aspirational district. Second, a committee needs to be formed who would decide that how this pooling in of fund can be possible and where it should be spent and monitored. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, I would request if we can
Yes.
offline now.
Yeah, please, let's do that. I think we overshot our time. Thank you very much for everyone.